Okay, here we go. My name is Jamie Staten, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at Trecca. So thank you for joining us. The end of August, we sent out a virtual open house document to just go over different topics that we wanted students to know about or do a refresher each school year. We did a meet our staff. We talked about the live sessions, how to check student attendance, checking and understanding student progress, how to be a good learning partner. We talked about the family guide to Google. We discussed the free homework help tutoring that we have. We talked about the Gator Way for students, our SAFE program, and different mental health resources that we have available for our students. So along with that document, we also wanted to have a few live sessions as well to talk about some of the more topics that families ask us about and have questions about. So we wanted to do that as well this evening. If you're not familiar with Google, you will want to keep your microphone muted if you're not speaking. There's quite a few of us on here, and we'll get a bunch of static. We will have time for questions throughout the session, so you can unmute yourself or you can put your question in the chat box, whichever you're more comfortable with. And there is a closed caption button towards the bottom of your screen that you can use that as well. So today we're going to talk about checking and understanding student progress. And I'm going to go ahead at this time and turn this over to Mr. Daly. He is going to be handling this session, and he is on our teaching staff.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks everyone for being here or for watching the recording in the future. I really appreciate you checking out this very important topic. My name is Daniel Daly. I'm a social studies teacher here at Trecca. I've worked here for over 10 years. And something cool, especially if you're newer to Trecca or your students moving from the middle school to the high school, you can always check out that trecca.org/staff page that's linked there. It has pictures of all your students' teachers, advisors, counselors, staff, and a little blurb about them. So if you have a new list of teachers, staff members, always check out that staff page. It's kind of cool to kind of see who's working with your student, just put a name to a face. It also has like contact information and some really helpful stuff. So we can roll ahead into two really, really massive ideas. I'm just going to throw out right now about checking progress, and we're going to revisit them at the end because these are massive. This is like the most important stuff I want you to go take away from this session. And that is first that checking and understanding a student's progress is a collaborative and ongoing efforts between students, learning partners, and Trecca staff. I think, maybe 20 years ago when online learning started, there was an idea that, you give a kid a computer, they're an online learner, and just plug and play, and they're going to learn everything they need to. We kind of quickly learned that because Trecca has been around for over 20 years. We kind of learned early on that that was not really how it happens. It really is such a collaborative and ongoing effort to support our students. And we greatly appreciate your work as learning partners, your efforts of your students, and then us as staff to all work together. So it's an ongoing collaborative process. The second big idea to take away is that asking questions or asking for help is welcome and encouraged. There's no such thing as a silly question or bothering someone or, asking for too much help, especially when it comes to things like checking progress, working towards goals. We're here to support your student and want to see them succeed. What I always tell my students is, we're all on the same team here. So we'll revisit those at the end. I just want you to keep those in mind as we go through our session and as you go through the school year. Some resources I'll also revisit at the end because they are really super helpful and cool that Trecca has right on their website. Trecca.org/support is a really wonderful site to always check out for any system that we have. There's some great step sheets, videos, things like that. So Trecca.org/support even has some great checking progress step sheets that you can go and refer to. So if you watch the recording back and you still have some questions, you can bring them to your student's teacher or advisor, or definitely check out Trecca.org/support as everything you need there. Along with that, there's also a cool video series we've done over the past few years called Barrier Busters. The one in particular that would be linked to our session today is called Monitoring Process with Mrs. Monin. She does really excellent work. She's worked at Trekka for a long time. And in that video, it's like 2 or 3 minutes. She just kind of goes through the importance and the process of checking progress. So we're all about, providing additional resources and support. And we'll revisit those resources at the end just to remind you that they're there. On our next slide here, the term Brightspace is one that you've doubtlessly heard from your students as they start their school year. It's our learning management system. It's kind of like our school building. Students log into Brightspace every day, and that's where their classes are. That's where they get attendance credit. It's basically what our school building is. So Brightspace is what Trekka students log into to complete their work and access their classes. On our next slide, just something to really keep in mind is as a learning partner, whether you have a kindergartner or a senior student, as learning partners, we need you to be helping your student check their progress at least once a week together. An easy way to do this is pick a day of the week and make it part of your routine. Maybe it's a Monday at the start of the week. Maybe it's a Friday at the end of the week. You and your student can pick a time and go through that together in Brightspace. It really makes it easier to provide additional support to your student during the year when we notice a student is, falling behind or hearing concerns from a student just early in the year in these fall months. And you, as a learning partner, get the benefit of always knowing how your student's doing any day of the year. You don't necessarily have to wait for a printed report card or progress report. It's always there live for you 24/7 within Brightspace. So how exactly do you get to that progress? How do you see that view? Well, there's 2 ways to access a course within Brightspace. And if you hop to the next slide, we'll see both of them. When you log in as a student or as your student logs in alongside you, you'll see either on the right-hand side, there's a section called My Courses. So your student would be able to show you every class that they're currently enrolled in, math class, English class, social studies class, whatever they have on their schedule currently. Or at the top, I kind of like this method a little bit better. There's a waffle, we'll call it. It looks like 9 squares, kind of a waffle look. And you can select your student's class that you want to check progress in there. So if you were doing a weekly check of your student's progress, you could simply click through every one of those 5 classes that students currently enrolled in and kind of use that. Another nice feature of that waffle view, if you want to call it that, is you can pin classes. So in this example here, the student has pinned a bunch of the classes and they kind of show up highlighted in blue. So those are the core classes maybe they're focusing on right now. Makes it easier for them to access, makes it easier for you as a learning partner to kind of see what they're working on. So that's how you can get to their actual classes. Once you click into a class, all classes will have a number of buttons across the top. So course home, content, users. Where you're going to go to check progress is the grades button. So if you tap that grades button at the upper kind of right portion of a class, it's going to load up your student's current work on the class, what grades they've earned. From this course home view, however, you're always going to be able to see who your student's teacher is, as well as their contact information, their office hours, news announcements they have. So this course home view is really, really helpful for you to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the class, who's working with your student. But that grades tab at the upper right is where you want to click to get a view of where they're working, what grades they're earning, what the teacher's saying about their work. And all of our courses are broken down into blocks. So, at this point in the school year, a couple in, you've probably, heard your student talk about what block they're working in. Maybe they're finishing up block 1 in some classes, getting into block 2. A block is just comprised of 3 different weeks of work. Once those 3 weeks of work are completed, the next block will open. For a full year class, that class is going to be 12 blocks or 36 weeks. For a half year class, a semester long class like we have some at the high school level, that's going to be 6 blocks or 18 weeks. And on this view here, this nice image, hopefully you can see it, but this teacher here has their grade book set up really nicely. So you can see there's block 1, so it says block 1, week 1, and then the name of the assignment there. You can see that the student earned a 20 out of 20 on the assignment, as well as some feedback from the teacher. You can also see, if you go to the next slide here, this is a screenshot from a student in one of my classes I teach. This student had struggled with a few of our discussion boards in Block 3, so that you kind of see those low scores there, 20%, 30%. Brightspaces kind of automatically highlights those for us, as well as the feedback I left for them. And one of the things I had suggested in the feedback was, hey, let's hop into Google Meet, let's work together, let's touch these up. And I think on Friday, I met with this student, we talked through those together, and I was able to adjust their scores in the gradebook and add additional feedback there. So if your student is saying stuff like, I can't move ahead, I'm stuck, I can't go forward, probably likely that they have a low grade or a failing grade that they need to work with their teacher or go back and attempt again. And this grades page does a really nice job in most cases of giving you the direction of, we need to meet in Google Meet. You need to redo this. Please contact me. Those are things you might see in that feedback area there. Also, one other place you can always look, or your student can look, is the course syllabus. All classes have a course syllabus that will outline what the minimum score requirements for moving on would be. For most teachers, it's 70%. Some teachers at the high school level might be a little more permissible with 60% scores. But the course syllabus and working directly with the teacher can kind of help you understand what your student might need to do if they're feeling stuck or cannot move forward until they respond to feedback left by the teacher. Awesome. So something to keep in mind that's really, really important. All students, in order to finish their classes by the end of the school year, should really be striving to finish a block of work in every one of their classes within a 15-day or within a 3-week period. So if you're unsure if your student is making enough progress to finish by the end of the school year, you can visit the advisor homeroom, which we'll look at in a second here, and contact your student's advisor. Or if you have an elementary student, their teacher will also serve as their advisor. Also say, as we go through the school year, if your student ends up, a week behind in a class or two, not the end of the world. We're a self-paced school, so we do encourage students to work at their own pace, take their time. We understand that some students might have really big strength in science, but they really need additional support and might take a little longer in social studies. So through the year, if your student's a little bit, tiny bit behind in a class, usually it's not a big deal. We can work to catch them up. If we get going here, we're into September, October, November, and your student's seeing that they're a block or more behind, that's really something we need to address and make sure we're working together on. So here is an ideal example of how a student will be making progress. So let's call the student Grace. Grace is a new student at Trecca, and she just started her classes here on August 21st. So that was the first day of our new school year. So Grace is in this Algebra 1 class, this math class. And in that first week of school, which would be August 21st to 25th, we would need Grace to block 1, week 1. If Grace was done with block 1, week 1, the next week she could finish block 1, week 2. And finally, last week, which was the 4th or the 8th, Grace should finish block 1, week 3, and block 1 would be finished. Tremendous. This week, it sounds like she would be starting block 2, week 1. So that would be a really ideal setup here. If you see that, if you saw that Grace was behind or having trouble, her teacher, her advisor are probably already reaching out, but you could help direct them by checking their progress to contact their teacher or seeing if they have, some help with, need some help with contacting them or reaching out. One thing to keep in mind, and I'm going to address that wonderful question in the chat I just saw pop up, is that Trecca students and all online students in Ohio, so this is not just a Trecca requirement, this is a state of Ohio requirement for online students, is all online students are accountable for working 5 hours and 10 minutes each school day. So if your student finishes their weekly work within that amount of time or finishes their daily work within that amount of time, they should continue forward. So if Grace finds that she's completed that amount of work across her classes in a day, keep on going. In most classes, you should be able to work ahead and get, make sure you're getting that time requirement also. And our question in the chat was a wonderful one. If a student started later, do we just work more to get caught up on the work? Yeah, so let's say your student might have started, this last week, the 4th through the 8th. They're starting block 1, week 1. being that early in the school year, I still think working at that 1 week, 1 week a week, 1 week of work per week pace is appropriate. I think they'll still be able to finish the class in plenty of time by the end of our school year in May. So that's something to address with the advisor and just kind of double check with them, make sure working at that pace would be appropriate for them. Depending on when your student starts, we do have students enroll all through the year. If you did have a student who started, let's say, in January, we always get new students in January at the start of the semester. That'd be a really great time to work with the advisor and say, here's my goal by the end of, May. By the end of the school year, I want to have this much work done. That's kind of a little more specialized for the advisor to work with, which I'll talk about in a second. If your student just has started, in early September, late August, kind of working that 1 week of work per week schedule should just be fine. We can always check with the advisor too and make sure things are looking good through the year to, get caught up and get to where they need to be, or if they might need to, just dash ahead a little bit 1 week to get caught up. It probably depends on the class and the students, how the students feeling as they get started. It's a wonderful, wonderful question. If I can clarify that anymore, keep on asking in the chat. Here's some more examples I wanted to throw out there. We definitely have all sorts of examples from students. We definitely have all sorts of student situations, reasons why students come to TRECA to pursue an online education. First example here might be from Alexander. Let's say Alexander joined TRECA this year and he really should be a senior, his 4th year in high school, but at his previous school, Alexander failed several classes and is still just a junior. He set a goal to graduate this year, but will need to complete more than a traditional year of work. So in that case, that's the goal. That's a wonderful goal to have. We want Alexander to pursue that. We see a lot of students in this position, every year. They would want to work with their advisor to say, hey, how much work should I be completing to make sure that I do accomplish this goal? Just working at that standard 1 week per week goal for Alexander probably isn't going to get him to where he wants to be at the end of the year, but that's something we can tailor personally to him. Another example could be Terry. Let's say Terry just joined TRECA this year, and they're taking several college level classes through the College Career Plus program, College Credit Plus program, as well as several classes through TRECA. That's a pretty, advanced kind of some more personalization is going to have to happen there to find out what requirements are in those college classes, what he has to do for high school still, so the advisor can work with them to kind of tailor that to them. Another example could be Allie. Say Allie is returning to TRECA after a successful and productive junior year and is trying to graduate early. Again, they might want to be completing extra work, making extra progress each week to stay on track for that goal. So again, all these students and their learning partners can work with their advisors, can work with their teachers to set appropriate progress goals to help them reach their academic goals for the year. And communicating these goals early in the year is so helpful. We've had situations where, like Alexander, they have a really great goal, but they or their learning partner do not communicate that to us until December. It's like, oh, this would have been really super helpful to know back in, August. We could kind of set you up to go a little bit faster or to try to work at a little bit more of an advanced pace. So communicating those special goals you or your student might have is so helpful and so appreciated as you start the school year. It just helps us and helps you work together. I've referenced this group a bunch so far, and that is the advisor. At the middle school or high school level, students are each assigned an academic advisor. If you have an elementary student, I will address that here in a second. The advisor at the middle or high school level has a really great overview of all the students' classes and can help support students and learning partners with setting work progress goals or providing detailed overviews of the students' work so far that year. So I'm an American government teacher. I would love to support your student for their American government class, help you, know where they are, how their progress is coming, what they're doing great with, what they could use some work on. But when it comes to what they're doing in their English class, their math class, science class, I don't really know. I can go look at their grades, I can see, try to figure it out for myself. But your student's advisor is going to have that overview, that great kind of picture of what they need to be doing, if they're behind in the class, if they're ahead, or helping to set up that special work schedule. So through the year, the advisor will call, email you with what the progress updates are for your student. And it's really, really helpful if you let the advisor kind of know what your preferred contact method is. People work during the day, people have, times that they are really good at checking their email, times that they would rather get a text. Whatever it is, if you kind of communicate that to the advisor, that helps keep that line of communication open a little bit easier for them and for us. For your individual classes, your teacher, like for American government, can also work with you to help set up those goals or to help you catch up if you're behind. If you have a middle or high school level student, when you click on the waffle of the drop down of courses, you should see that your student is enrolled in a homeroom and then the name of an advisor. So in this really tiny picture here, sorry, it's so tiny, this student's homeroom advisor would be Mrs. Edler. And within her class, she has a lot of resources about checking progress, about different programs we offer. So it's a really great kind of place to kind of look around with you and your student to see some great resources and answers to questions you might be having, as well as the contact information for Mrs. Edler. So remember, your advisor is going to be able to see the big picture of what you're doing right now, what you need to be doing, and what changes you can make to help you meet a goal. So they're wonderful to work with. At the elementary level, our teachers, the elementary teachers, so our first grade teacher, second grade teacher, they also work as our students' advisors. So they, will also kind of have that homeroom view that you can access. Your teacher at the elementary level would love to continue to support you and make sure you're staying on track in the class. They'll contact you through the year about your students' progress and learning. Since I'm at the high school level, I did check with an elementary teacher to make sure, that advice is still the same as far as checking the grades tab like we looked at earlier. It still is. That grades page, that grades tab is a wonderful place to check. Some of the elementary teachers also really reminded to check the news posts. It seems like they do pretty frequent news posts about learning opportunities, kind of reminders. The news posts that they post are going to be really good to check out as well as that grades page. One other thing I wanted to mention as far as progress goes is that TRECA does send home a printed and mailed progress report every year to your home address. This usually goes out in late January, early February, when we're halfway through the school year, when we kind of hit that end of semester 1 mark. Most of the information on the progress report actually comes right from the Brightspace grades page. So I know this picture is really teeny tiny, you can't see it great. It's okay, you don't have to. It basically is just an example of what our progress report will look like that gets mailed to you. It has some stuff that's directly from the grades page, like your student's overall course grade, how many assignments they've completed, the percentage of assignments they've completed in a class, as well as what block they should currently be working in. I think that's really neat. Also along the left-hand side, your teacher can fill in specific comments for you, like, students should be working in block 8, but they're currently working in block, 6, or they're doing a wonderful job so far in biology class. That's kind of a nice place to document it. Keep in mind, checking progress doesn't need to wait until this paper ends up in your mailbox in January. It's something that can happen literally every single day, every single week, just by clicking on that Brightspace grades page. It has most of that same information that we see here. So that's probably the busiest time of the year for me as a teacher would be in January, February, when these go home. We always get additional phone calls, which is great. I appreciate people reaching out, but sometimes there's some surprises about, oh, it says my student's supposed to be in block 7, but you said they're only in block 3. And it's, just kind of one of those where it's really great to address early in the year and through the year to make sure that we're supporting the student throughout the year and figuring out why they might be falling behind or what's going on that we might need to know about to help support them. And I did ask some advisors for some tips about what they would want learning partners to know. We know that the advisor at the middle school and high school level, and I'm certain at the elementary level with the teachers, would want us all to make sure we're enacting these. The first tip was to know who each staff member is who's supporting your student at TRECA. Your student has to interact with a lot of different people, different teachers, an advisor, a counselor, the help desk. We have a lot of people on Mrs. Staten. We have a lot of people, different people on staff who support your student. So kind of get familiar with who is who. If you're not sure who someone is, you keep seeing emails from them or getting phone calls from them, and you're not really certain, what exactly does the counselor do versus the advisor? ask, let us know. We would love to help you and clarify that for you, as well as going back to what I said the very first thing when we started, that trecca.org/staff site is so nice just to see who is working with their student, learn a little bit about them, as well as their contact information. Another tip would be don't hesitate to reach out early and often at the start of the school year. Often, especially for new students, new families to Trecca, they do need additional support in the first couple weeks of the school year to kind of figure out our systems, get in the flow of things. That is so totally understandable. We would love to support you, so never feel like you're bothering anyone or asking a silly question. And again, we don't want to wait until the paper progress reports come home. Kind of make sure you're reaching out if you're seeing anything or hearing anything at home that would help us kind of support your student. Another tip that I heard from some advisors was make sure that you're checking your email spam folder, so kind of where some of your email might file away what it thinks is spam. I've heard that sometimes, on occasion, some emails can categorize an email from a Trecca advisor or an automated email that we send out as spam. Just kind of go through there every once in a while, make sure nothing's there. And if it is, something's getting bumped over there, you can toggle with your email settings to make sure that they don't get lost there. That hasn't really ever happened to me that I know of, but it's something good just to keep an eye on at the beginning of each school year, make sure nothing's getting lost there. Another tip is that Trecca's phone number as a school is at 888-828-4798. Sometimes when I see a number pop up that's an 800 number, an 888 number, I'm like, who's calling me? What is this all about? Is this a scam? What's going on? But that's our school number. I would suggest adding that to your contacts to make sure when it comes through, you know who it is right away, and you don't let it go to voicemail, or if you do, you know who's calling you. Another tip is one we've addressed already, especially if you're a high school student. I work mostly with students who are in that junior, senior level, so this is especially important to me for students who are aiming to graduate. If you have a special goal for the school year, really important to communicate that to us early in the year or as they enroll. Mention it to your enrollment person, the person at the office when you do orientation, your advisor, whoever it is, to make sure that we're aware of what your goal is for the school year. We can help supporting you towards that goal. Final tip would be make sure all of your contact information is up to date in the Evolve portal. If you're unsure about the Evolve portal, I do believe that is tomorrow's session that we have. So if you want to learn more about updating your contact information in Evolve, you can check that out tomorrow night, or on that trecca.org/support page. It has Evolve support documents there as well. If you have a preferred method of communicating, definitely let us know. I don't want to be blowing up your cell phone if you're someone who really prefers email, or sending you emails if you really only can talk on the phone ever. If you have an easier way to communicate, let us know. We want to make it easy for everyone. Another really useful document here is this block calendar that we put together every year. This should be available in your student's homeroom. So you can ask the advisor or your elementary teacher for this. And this kind of outlines ideally where our students are working at different points of the school year, as well as our holidays or days off that we have throughout the year. Keep in mind, if we do have a holiday, if we do have a day off of school, your student still does have access to those classes, or over the weekend they have access to those classes. They can work to catch up if they need to, or work to get ahead if they want to. But you might not have a teacher live support during those holidays or weekend days. This is a really useful one, especially if you do have students who are starting within this first August and September part of the school year. Again, if your student did start a class, September 8th, you could kind of shift this a little bit to kind of figure out, okay, they're going to be getting into block 2 a little bit later, but they still should be able to finish the school year in time or get really close to the end by just working a little bit more towards the end of the year when they have a shorter week of work. So that's a really great document to refer to, maybe have printed out, and again, should be in your student's homeroom for them to access and maybe have available. So just kind of circling back to these two massive ideas we started with, I mentioned things that connect to this a few times through our session. Checking and understanding a student's progress is collaborative and ongoing effort between students, learning partners, and Trecca staff. And asking questions or asking for help is always welcome, always encouraged. We're here to support your student. We want to see them succeed. we're all on the same team here. So with that, we're going to see our resources again. Just remember that trecca.org/support page is super helpful for any program that we direct you to, or any specific requirement that we have for student progress or tracking time. It's all there, as well as that barrier buster video we have with Mrs. Monin. And that is the end of my talk. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, hop on the microphone, and keep in mind if anything comes up through the year or tomorrow, an hour from now, send us over an email or chat, phone call, whatever it is. If you're not sure who to call, just call the Trecca main number, that 888-828-4798. Let them know who your student is, and they'll direct you to who you need to talk to. So any questions or anything else we wanted to clarify from today's talk?